And so thanks for coming, and thanks for listening and participating, and we really hope and feel confident that you're going to leave with some good information to help you or somebody that you know and love. Before we get started, before I introduce our speaker and our guest today, my name is Sharon Brennan. I'm one of the counselors here on campus, and I am joined by my colleague Suzanne Nasser, who's also a counselor here on campus, and our director, Jessica Contreras, who's up here. And so we wanted to welcome you and share some information about our department and what we can provide you moving forward, if you'd like, or if you know somebody who could benefit. All of our services are free. And so sometimes students don't know that they can come and talk to us if they have something going on. And with a presentation like today, you just never know what's going to come up. And so we do want to start by letting you know that you can come and speak with us in the counseling center. All of our services are free and confidential. All of the counselors are licensed clinical mental health professionals, okay? So you're in good hands, and we all work very well with each other, and our priority is you and your health and well-being. We provide a number of different services, mostly around advocacy, academic counseling to kind of help with acclimation and transition to college, the rigor, the demands, how to juggle and do it all well. We offer career counseling if you are thinking you're totally confident, but then also maybe wondering about some other possibilities, as well as those individuals who are undecided. We're here to help you kind of make those decisions about your future. And then in addition, we also have personal counseling. So things that come up in life, whether they be related to your classes or not, but anything that can be personal within you or personal outside of school that is impacting your ability to do well is something that you can come and talk with us about, and we'd like you to know that before you leave today. We do offer a robust programming schedule. This workshop is a part of it throughout the academic year. Towards the end of the program, I'm going to share a couple things that are coming up next week. So be on the lookout for that, and please come and visit us at some of our other events. It's important to us that you know that we provide our services holistically, so you may come to see us for one thing, and then inevitably, you know, as you start talking and building rapport, and you realize that you're just one person and everything is linked together, and so please feel comfortable. We do have a number of resources that we can connect you to on and off campus. Sometimes, you know, you've heard the saying, you know, it takes a village, it takes a community. So we're here to support you, and we're here to help connect you to other services that would be helpful, including, you know, we have Project Care, which is a service that we offer that has our food pantry as well as emergency financial support, in addition to connecting you with other resources. So please, if you feel like you could benefit from any of that, whether it be in regards to today's programming or otherwise, please feel free to come see us and know that you're welcome. With that, I'd like to introduce our presenter. Please help me in welcoming Tracy Curtis. She is the Community Education and Outreach Coordinator at the Crisis Center for South Suburbia. For those that don't know, the Crisis Center for South Suburbia is a nonprofit community organization that provides emergency shelter and other essential services for individuals and families victimized by domestic violence, and addresses the societal issues that contribute to domestic violence. Tracy holds a master's in forensic psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and specifically chose this degree to further her knowledge on the dynamics of domestic violence and the behaviors of those that abuse to help better educate and assist survivors and our communities. Tracy is also a domestic violence survivor. She shared that having the opportunity to educate others on domestic abuse allows her to pay it forward. She hopes her work can either assist survivors in safely leaving an abusive relationship and or prevent others from becoming victims of domestic violence. Outside of work, Tracy has 2 adult daughters. One is an attorney and the other is a probation officer. Her girls grew up showing horses, and they've spent much of their family time traveling for shows in other states as well as locally. Tracy enjoys baking and spending time with her 2 Australian shepherds, Lilo and RJ, okay, and says that there's never a dull moment in her household, which I can only imagine. So thank you, Tracy, for being with us, and well, hand it over to you.
Okay. Sorry, guys, I have a bum knee, so I'll go between probably standing and sitting. At any time, if you can't hear me, let me know. If you have any questions, I kind of prefer things to maybe be more of a discussion. You guys get lectured at a lot for school. I haven't been out of grad school that long, so I'd rather it just kind of be a discussion so everyone leaves here and they have the working knowledge of domestic violence. Our slogan, our national slogan for Domestic Violence Awareness Month is everyone knows someone. And it's true. Domestic violence has been so stigmatized, and everyone still thinks it's kind of a private family matter, and it's really not. It impacts us all. I'm going to go through some of the slides. We're going to end at 1:45, so we'll kind of maybe skip around. I won't elaborate on a lot because I kind of want to give you guys the brief overview so you get the information. But if I'm going too fast, just let me know if you have a question, okay? This is our disclaimer that we put on all our presentations. Obviously, domestic violence, there's nothing very graphic in here, but sometimes just talking about issues can trigger a survivor if they're in the audience. I never know who's in my audience because I'm out in the community, I'm working with professionals, I'm on the college campuses. So the first thing is, just for simplicity of the presentation, we say she, her as victim survivor, he, him as abuser. We're very well aware that males can be victims as well. We're one of like the 7 shelters in Illinois that house male victims and older male children. A lot of the shelters will not take males. They won't take the older children because of the possibility of triggers. We just try and keep them separated. Males have to have that support as well. And then also, if anything, again, as Sharon said, if anything becomes too emotionally overwhelming, you can go ahead and exit and come back when you're ready. No questions asked, and the counselors are here for you as well, okay? So what is our why? Why do you think I go out, and you can tell I've lost my voice for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We're only halfway through of it. I talk a lot. Why do you think we're out doing this? Go back to our slogan. Yeah. Education is our best tool for prevention at this point in time. We want to raise that awareness. We want to get in there. We're even in schools. We have a curriculum for grades 7 to 12. We kind of have to meet the kids where they're at, but we need to get in there early, because even if you have violence in the home, that's something that may be normalized. It's what you grew up in the home. So we need to be able to break those intergenerational traumas and that abuse going forward, to where there's a certain percentage, they say, that if a child witnesses abuse in the home, one may go on to be the victim, the other one may go on to be the abuser. We just want to take that out of it. It's not a given, just kind of a statistic. But we don't want this to continue on. This does impact all of society. It impacts us all. Everyone knows someone, guaranteed. And there it is, because it impacts everyone. So this is important because it's kind of our foundation, what we're going to be talking about today. Illinois has a very extensive definition of domestic violence. I teach adjunct abnormal psych at a community college in Indiana. They wanted me to come into the psychology club to do a DV 101 presentation. All my slides are for Illinois. I live in Indiana, but I'm like, I work in Illinois. So I'm Googling, trying to find a definition of domestic violence in Indiana. I'm used to this. This is pretty darn extensive. The thing of it is we want to look, there's sometimes situational abuse that should never happen. Do we want to coin that domestic abuse? No, because when we're talking about domestic abuse, we're looking at that pattern of abusive behaviors. It's used by the one person to gain power and control over the other person. They can do this through fear and intimidation, hitting, strangling, kicking, threatening, interference with the personal liberty of the survivor. Do you guys know what personal liberties are? as citizens of the United States, we have the right to be able to move around freely. They are interfering, the abusers interfering in our personal liberties when they start to isolate us. They start to track us with GPS, not allow us to go places. That is an interference of personal liberty, and that is a crime. So just keep note of that personal liberty piece and the fear and intimidation. A lot of shelters in Illinois, they only cover what we call intimate partner violence. So it is just those romantic relationships that they'll take the victim into shelter. We cover it all. So we have all of these people, if they're doing those above things and it's a pattern, they're abusing somebody. It's family members related by blood, people are married or used to be married, people who used to share a home, apartment, or a common dwelling, having a child in common or allegedly having a child in common, people who are dating or engaged or used to date or be engaged, including same-sex couples, and people with disabilities and their personal assistants. So that's a lot of people. We will take, if we have room at our shelter and they're in imminent danger, we're going to try and help the victim the best we can, keep them safe, okay? So types of abuse, we all know the physical. Lifetime movie, a woman walks in with dark sunglasses, takes them off, and she's got a bruised eye, or she doesn't want to take them off. That's kind of the stereotype of what domestic abuse is. It's a lot more. It is also verbal, emotional, sexual, mental, or that's psychological, and it can be financial. So these are just kind of bullet pointed. Again, it's not inclusive of what could be considered abuse or who could be charged for abuse in Illinois. Some of the statistics, first thing you need to know is it happens to everyone. There's no stereotype of it. It is across socioeconomic statuses, race, age, sexual orientation, religion, it's everywhere. Our founder that founded our agency and shelter, she was a domestic violence active victim, and her husband murdered her shortly after she got the shelter up and going. He was a very affluent attorney in Chicago. It's actually a movie. You have to find it on YouTube because it's a little dated, but I think it's called Deadly Matrimony. One of those things. You just have to Google Diane Masters. So people always think, what? She was a victim? She had a domestic violence agency. She was. And actually, she started the first shelter here on Moraine Valley campus in a farmhouse before we moved it, did the Capitol campaign and moved the shelter to Tinley Park. So we've got an attachment here to Moraine Valley because this is where we started. So it's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men that have been physically abused by an intimate partner. Okay, so I'm up here telling you guys there's more than just intimate partner. But look at what they're giving us, physical abuse and intimate partner. Those are our statistics. So as we go on and kind of start talking about some of the other things and expand on abuse, you can only kind of think of what maybe truly those statistics are. The 1 in 4 men is probably more even with that 1 in 3 with women because men underreport. A lot of them don't want to admit to a police officer that comes in. They might not want to talk to anyone about it because it's embarrassing. Personally, I have a lot of respect for them because they didn't lay hands back or go back on whoever is victimizing them. So I wish they didn't feel that way, and we're trying to break that stigma as well so more men will reach out for help. So we have, I told you, it's across the board. These are just some specifics. We wanted to include the populations. With looking at abuse, we said it does not discriminate. There's certain nuances in some of the different populations. We have abuse in later life that are the older people. There's more nuances in there. These are the two that we're talking about just under here in the LGBT community that may have a more impact for you guys as age group. They wanted me to kind of funnel it in to college age for you guys. Intimate partner violence happens. There's some of the statistics, it actually happens at a higher rate to the LGBTQ community than it does non-LGBTQ. For straight women, it's 35% is the prevalence of IPV, 43.8 for lesbian, and 61.1% for bisexual women. That's a big difference between just straight women, right? So we're not just talking about that. So we have to know that it's impacting all different populations. The lifetime prevalence of intimate partner for straight men is 29%. Gay men is 26%. It kind of goes down, but then it goes back up for bisexual, which is 37%. Okay. So as we go through and we start talking about barriers, we're kind of pointing out for the different populations as well. So this is when I said, what is our why? It impacts society. It impacts us all. These are more recent statistics. Probably the oldest statistics I have come from 2018. They're not updated all the time, but I like to make sure that I give you guys the most current ones that we have. We pull from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which is kind of our umbrella, and each of the states have their own coalition as well that they're members of. So in the United States, an average of 20 people are physically abused by intimate partners every minute. Again, we're just talking physical abuse. We're just talking intimate partners. The reason why these statistics have physical violence in them is because physical and sexual abuse is what is criminalized in the United States. The psychological, the emotional, that abuse may have a small consideration, but they're not going to give an abuser criminal charges for that. And a lot of police officers that go in, because they're the first ones that are called when there is a domestic, they really can't detect anything past the physical, but that's what they're going to look for because that's what they're going to get charges for. This equates to more than 10 million abuse victims annually. It's more like 12 million. That has gone up. Okay. On a typical day, DV hotlines nationwide receive about 20,000 calls. Just alone in fiscal year 24, we had over 2,000 calls just to our hotline in Tinley Park. Now, that being said, we do our catchment area, what they call is Southwest Cook County and some of Will County. It's a very populated area, but we also will take people outside of that. If they can get to our services, we have resources, or we can take people from Indiana. We're very close to the border there. Or we've had people come in from Florida, I think Texas as well. They may have family here, but we'll take them if they can get to us. Intimate partner violence is most common among women between the ages of 18 to 24. How many of you guys are in that age range? Yeah, I can't raise my hand, but I'm sure you all can. Yeah, 18 to 24. And that's because you guys are starting to look more at the more serious relationships. You're out of high school now. Not that dating violence does not take place. It absolutely does. That's why we go into the schools. And you're starting to look more, maybe be more marriage-minded, looking towards more the 24 end. But that end number is going up. We do see older victims as well. A lifetime economic cost of intimate partner violence to the U.S. population is $3.6 trillion. So that encapsulates the police officers that come, if there's been injuries and medical care, first responders, mental health professionals that are trying to help the victims. Even we don't charge for our services either, but we have to get paid some way, so that comes from grant funding. So they kind of encapsulate that as well, just to keep the shelters and DV professionals going. Look at that first statistic. When I first started here at the Crisis Center in 2022, it was 500. Now it's 1,000%. If there is a gun in that home, it's almost a guarantee that that abuser's gonna kill the victim. A lot of people kind of push back on that. It could fluctuate, but these are the numbers that we're getting. Firearms and knives are your two number one weapons that are used in domestic homicides. Domestic homicides have doubled in Illinois. I've been doing more of the crisis type intervention, going out and talking with the churches and the communities after it happens. We've just had too many here within the past year. So that's where we need to start bringing those down. Again, education is our best prevention tool. Guns not only amplify a potential homicide, but they can use them for emotional abuse, psychological abuse. Put one bullet in the chamber, spin it. If it doesn't dislodge, he says, next time I will kill you. How do you think that victim would feel? That's very abusive emotionally, psychologically. Intimate partner violence accounts for about 15% of all violent crime. 38% of all murders of women are committed by an intimate partner or former intimate partner. All genders and sexual orientations are impacted, but the most severe are female victims with a male abuser, so heterosexual relationships. 19% of intimate partner violence involves a weapon. We just said it's usually gun or knife. And then on average, more than 3 women and 1 man are murdered by their intimate partners in the US every day. I lost my niece 4 years ago. Her abuser murdered her with a gun. A month before that, he had strangled her. We're looking at, and we'll touch a little bit about when we talk maybe in a little more detail. I just want to stay on task with the time. Physical abuse, the one thing that they're looking at now for first responders, and we're trying to train, is about strangulation. Some people will say, oh, he choked me out. It's not choking, proper termination, strangulation. We're never going to tell a victim, oh no, you said the wrong term. Just know it's strangulation. It's very lethal. If the abuser strangles the victim, she has a 750% increase in lethality that he'll kill her the next time. And that's what happened with my niece. He strangled her a month before he murdered her. So that's something that we have to train on. So if someone tells you guys, you know, he choked me, that needs to be a big red flag. And you need to try and help them and see if you can get them to services so they can get the support, okay? Even if she is strangled and she still lives, she could still have long-term medical complications. She had an aneurysm, a stroke, because he's cutting off oxygen and blood to the brain. Okay, so there can be long-term medical consequences as well. So this here, I think we always say, and I was just at an event this morning, and they're like, well, he's got anger management issues. He's got mental illness. And this might sound familiar to you guys because social media is big. And I'm about ready to let you guys know all abusers are not narcissists. Abuse is a choice. It is not caused by a personality disorder. It is not caused by mental illness. It's not caused by him using substances. It can increase, so it can influence the intensity of it, but it's not going to cause the abuser to abuse. The abuser, it's his choice to abuse. So we say that there's correlation, but there's not causation. So sometimes there are those underlying personality disorders that we have to be aware of, because usually with those personality disorders, it's very hard to get behavior modification because they won't take accountability. They will deny, justify, minimize, blame, put it back onto the victim. How many of you guys are psychology majors in here? Psychology class. Okay. They're like, I'm not saying. Undergraduate is my bachelor's is psychology. They don't teach you a lot about domestic violence. They don't teach you a lot about personality disorders. And that's why I went for forensic psychology, because they did go a little more in depth into those things. So just know that every narcissist is not an abuser, and every abuser is not a narcissist. It could be a correlating factor. Even if that abuse is generally a learned behavior, so if they're seeing that behavior in the home when they're a child, that might be normal for them. Is it right that they go on and choose to abuse? Absolutely not. And those adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs, I'm not sure if you guys have heard that word, those are things that can cause trauma, and that trauma can lead to mental illness, personality disorders. But abuse is a choice, because you can take two kids in a home that are witnessing domestic violence. One can be a victim, go on to be a victim, and the other one can go on to be the abuser. Okay. Communities, schools, peer groups, social media, all things are influenced. On social media, we have a lot of normalization of violence. I don't go out and do the Safe Start program because obviously I'm older, so we send these two girls out that look like, I call them our 21 Jump Street. Do you guys know who 21 Jump Street is? I'm probably really dating myself. They put their backpacks on and they're out, and they look like the students, but the students have a very good rapport with them, very good interaction with them. But they're out there talking about, let's see if I get this right, Blueface and Krishan. See, you guys didn't know I was hip like that, did you? That is some of the people on social media, things like that, that is just kind of starting to normalize it. Okay, I had to learn that from Sam and Kashira, so I'm really not hip. Power and control wheel for a heterosexual relationship. This is the nuts and the bolts of what domestic violence is. This tool was created in the 80s. It's still used today. Basically what it is a brief overview, is what is a domestic violence relationship about. Guys, don't speak all at once. Power and control. So that's why it's at the center of the wheel. We created this in a wheel because everything goes around in a circle in abuse. Nothing's linear. It doesn't happen one time. It's going to go around and around and around. So you got power and control in the middle. Those little pie pieces are tactics the abuser will try and use to get that power and control. So that's why they're kind of in those outer spokes. Usually what's in those pie pieces is what happens on the daily or frequently in a domestic abuse relationship. Those are coercive tactics that the abuser will use to try and instill fear, intimidation, interfere with personal liberties. On the outside of that is physical and sexual violence. We can agree and disagree with this. As we get further into domestic abuse and researching it, it's more of those pie pieces, those coercive tactics that are being used. But back in the 80s, they thought this physical and sexual violence is what held that abuse cycle together. So coming now up to 2024, 22, we've done more research. We know what goes on. An abuser will only use as much abuse as it takes to keep the victim into compliance. So obviously, physical and sexual are on the outer rim because those are used least. He's going to try and use those coercive tactics on the inside to get that power and control and keep her in compliance. The severity of the physical and sexual abuse for criminal charges are only about 2% of domestic abuse cases. We have to get away from thinking, because we only prosecute for both physical and sexual, we got to get away from that thinking. We have to think more along the lines of coercive control, because we're missing about 95 to 98% of domestic abuse cases. We don't criminalize for those little pie pieces, that coercive control. So the abuser's allowed to abuse flying under the radar and not getting charges. So when you're hearing, oh, he doesn't abuse anymore, you think he's not laying hands on you, he's not causing a fat lip or a bruised eye, but he's still abusing. It's still abuse. This is still a good tool because we still have people that come in and say, well, he didn't hit me. I don't think it's abuse. I don't think he was abusing me. So we break out the power and control wheel, where we start going through that, and you can see where the light bulb comes on. They're like, oh. So it's not just the physical and sexual. That's a very small part. They don't want criminal charges, but that's what they will use if those other tactics don't work with the victim. We also have the LGBTQ power and control wheel. There's really not much difference in this, right? We have an extra rim out there because there are the stigma, there are the phobias that are out there. And that can hold the cycle of abuse together as well for someone that is in the LGBT community for various reasons. Do you think they're going to want to come out if someone's not going to believe them? Domestic violence itself, victims are usually not believed. So if they have this extra layer, that outside rim there, that they're getting that stigmatization, it's really going to hold that cycle of abuse together, because it's going to be very hard for them to walk out of that relationship. And that abuser will use different tactics, which we'll go over next, to keep their partner in that relationship. So just outside of the power and control wheel, you have that isolation and outing. If you are in a relationship, same-sex relationship, the isolation, they can isolate you by outing you. They always use that threat. Well, I will tell if they haven't come out yet. So that is a level of fear that they can hold over their partner's head. I'll tell this person, I'll tell your parents, I'll tell whoever. Using vulnerabilities. That's a very vulnerable thing, is for someone to out you. It's another way that they can keep them in the relationship and continue to abuse. Using children, same thing for heterosexual. Using small communities. Very small communities all know each other. I grew up in one. They all know your business. So what are they going to do? Try and out you, let you know you're not going to walk out of that. Leveraging institutional violence and isolation. Domestic abuse victims as a whole, the judicial system is not victim friendly. So if you have also that you're LGBTQ, they can try and use that institutional and the judicial system still against you. And then alcohol and drug abuse, just another coercive tactic to create fear in the partner to keep them in the relationship. So that's how we have that extra outside ring of the wheel. This is a quick film, but we're not going to go over it because we only got about 10 more minutes. So coercive control, let me define it, and that's what that movie was about. I've been talking about coercive control, the fear and intimidation, the interference with personal liberties, willful deprivation, is another terminology in there. We are trying to get the words coercive control in that definition of domestic violence in Illinois. That's a way that we can move towards possibly criminalizing coercive control. There are 4 countries that are light years ahead of us in domestic violence. The UK, Scotland, Ireland, and Australia, they've already criminalized coercive control. So those are all those little pie pieces in that power and control wheel, those coercive tactics. They work wonders. This is isolation, this is gaslighting, all the different techniques and the words that you've probably heard on social media. It's a way to instill that fear and keep them in the relationship. So we can divide it up into physical, we can divide it up into emotional, sexual. It's all coercive control. They're using those tactics to keep that victim in compliance. Coercive control can also be extremely dangerous. Men that are extremely controlling are like 5 times more likely to murder their partner. It says, the last one, I need to take out that, I hate that last statistic. It says 1 in 3 women who experience intimate partner violence say they have been a victim of coercive control. If you're in an abusive relationship, you've all been victims of coercive control. That's what all of those are. So that's what we're looking at now, is just trying to get that word out there. If someone's using that pattern and trying to create fear in you to where you won't leave the relationship, it can be any form of abuse. It can be all those tactics. It's coercive control. Physical violence, coercive control. They're trying to scare you to stay in the relationship, right? Get you back into compliance. So that's where we have to think about, because sometimes they may never lay a hand on the person. They're going to use coercive control, fly under the radar, not get charges, but that first act of physical violence could be homicide. And that has happened before, where they've never laid hands on her until she says, I'm leaving, and then he snaps. He doesn't want to lose that power and control, and he can murder. Cycle of violence. 5 minutes. This is a cycle that they put you into. It will be in that relationship the whole time that you're in the abusive relationship. There's different diagrams on the internet. I use this one. I'm a survivor. Personally, the 3-phase one that they use starts a tension phase. If I would have known my abuser was abusive, I wouldn't have got with them. Things are very covert, but that's where that pursuit phase starts. Do you guys know the word love bombing? It's all over social media. Just that constant adoration and tension. It's very, very uncomfortable. Kind of start to get that icky feeling in your gut. We all like to hear nice things about ourselves, but there's sometimes when it's just over the top. That's usually love bombing. So he's trying to get you into that abusive relationship, put you into the cycle of abuse. With that, it'll go into the pleasant phase, where it just seems like a normal relationship. In that pursuit phase, how many of you have been in a relationship where you get 5,000 texts a day, a good morning beautiful, a good night beautiful? You like to talk with the person that you're interested in, that you're talking to, but we also have lives outside of that. It kind of starts to get that controlling pattern when they're constantly texting you. We go to the pleasant phase, and then you go into the tension phase. Maybe one day you don't hear from him at all after he's sent you the 5,000 texts for 3 weeks. You're like, what happened? What did I do? Why is he not texting me? Why is he not calling me? You start to kind of walk on eggshells. You feel like something's off. You're asking him, and he's like, stop bothering me. So you feel like it's something you've done. From there, that's where it goes to the abusive or the explosive phase. It doesn't have to be physical abuse. It can be verbal. It can be emotional. But that's where the abuse is going to take place. And then if you're new into the cycle, you have the remorse phase. How's he going to keep you there if he doesn't apologize? This will never happen again. I was just stressed out because of work. I was blah, 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 blah. They have lots of excuses. So basically what this cycle of violence is, it's used during the relationships, might not be used for like 2 months. Then he feels as though maybe you need to get back into compliance, or he feels you're starting to pull away. So he starts the love bombing again. He can alter the phases. The phases can be at any different frequency. But what this can do, it's not a given, is it can create that brain chemistry of attachment. The brain chemistry, the feel good, the dopamine, the oxytocin, where you get the butterflies. And then when it goes into the negative parts, that's when it goes to the negative brain chemistry. So that push and pull of positive reinforcement to negative can cause a chemical attachment called a trauma bond. Doesn't happen with everybody, but it's a possibility. Are we up? We didn't get to everything, but I can send handouts and stuff. Are there any questions that you guys have? No? Okay. If you guys can fill out your evaluations, I'd appreciate it. I'm getting better.
Thank you all for coming.
Just remind them to pick up resources about the
Yes. Sorry. Hopefully, you're able to take with you some really important information. There's so much information. There's so much to cover. It's hard to do it in a short amount of time. And we're happy to share more information with your instructor if it's wanted or needed or requested. Or you can come and talk with us anytime. We did want to share just a couple of things. Next week, we have a couple other events going on campus. We have an event on Tuesday, October 22nd from 1 to 2:15 here in the library. It's called It's Real, College Students and Mental Health. It's in collaboration with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So there's another opportunity for growth and learning, as well as we'd like to make it a little bit more prominently known that on our website, we have a free screening tool called MindWise. And what it does is it allows you to take a survey, have the results emailed to you, and it gives you a little bit of a summary about what you're reporting, what that could be pointing to, what might be some things to consider, and helps you to, give you maybe a tool or something to start with a reference if you wanted to try and get connected with someone in our department for additional support. In addition, before you leave, if you could leave your surveys that you've completed, we'd really appreciate it. Your feedback's helpful. And then on your way out, please feel free to stop by the resource table that we have set out. Okay, lots of resources about campus and off-campus things that are meant to help you and support you. So thank you for coming. If you have questions you want to tell us later, feel free. Okay, thank you.